Is there any basis for the conspiracy theory by Halyna Gutierrez Reed that someone intentionally placed a live round on the set of Rust, meaning that Halyna Hutchins was murdered? Or is this just a case of four people who had no business handling a firearm who are guilty of involuntary manslaughter? Well, let's break it down. My name is Christopher Melcher. I'm a California attorney and legal commentator, and I've been spending a lot of time looking at this story, and my thoughts have evolved over time, especially now after seeing the statement by Halyna Gutierrez Reed through her criminal defense attorney. To evaluate her conspiracy theory, we need to understand who is responsible for firearm safety on the set. This starts with the safety bulletin by CSATF, which is Contract Services Administration Trust Fund, that they've provided industry-wide guidance on how to safely use a firearm on the set of a movie. It starts with the producer because that's the person or entity who's making the film, and they're ultimately responsible for what happens on set. Now, the producer's representative for gun safety on the set of a movie is the property master, and the property master may delegate gun safety responsibilities to an armorer, who would then hand the firearm after checking it, making sure that this is completely safe for the scene that they're about to shoot, to the actor and instruct the actor on how to use it and demonstrate that it's unloaded and that it's safe to use. And that person, the actor, also bears responsibility because they are handling a firearm or simulated firearm on a set. Alec Baldwin was not only the actor who fired the gun, who killed Halyna Hutchins and injured Joel Sousa, but he was also a producer on the film. He may have received that as title only. We're not sure what exactly his role was as a producer, but he had the title. And with the title comes responsibility. So Alec Baldwin is on both ends of this safety chain. But there were breaks in this chain. It starts with Sarah Zachary, the property master, who retrieved this firearm from a locked container in her truck. Now, again, this was not a prop gun. It was a real firearm, obviously capable of firing a live round. They could have used a modified weapon that didn't have a firing pin in it, so even if a live round somehow got loaded in there and somebody pressed the trigger, it would not have gone off because there was no firing pin. But they chose, for whatever reason, not to use a modified gun. They used a real gun. Sarah Zachary got that real gun from her truck and handed it to Halyna Gutierrez Reed. It's not clear of the condition of the gun when it was handed over, meaning did it have any rounds in it, or did she hand any rounds to Halyna when this occurred? I'm not clear on that detail, but Halyna Gutierrez Reed now says she did receive this gun and checked the gun for whether it was live bullets or not, and then handed it to the first assistant director. Well, right there is a violation because the safety chain does not include the first assistant director. That person has no business touching this weapon. That's not his role, but Halyna admits that she gave the gun to David Halls, the first assistant director. She claims that she checked the gun to see that it was safe, and then Halyna walked out of the church. She didn't even wait to watch this scene where this firearm was going to be used. She said she was called away for other duties and left the gun with somebody who was not in charge of safe handling of that gun. Dave Halls then says he looked at the gun. He saw that there were like 3 cartridges in there or rounds in there, but didn't bother to check them to see if they were live rounds. He admits now that that was a mistake, but he hands this gun to Alec Baldwin and yells "cold gun," meaning this is safe to use. He's now handed a real gun with real bullets in it, a loaded weapon, to Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin relies on this statement and takes it in his hand, cross draws it, points it at the camera, presses the trigger, and right behind the camera is cinematographer Halyna Hutchins and Joel Sousa. And the gun, when it went off, killed Halyna Hutchins and injured Joel Sousa. Halyna Gutierrez Reed, the armorer, has hired a criminal defense attorney, and that person's going around now making statements. He says, Halyna kept guns locked up, including throughout lunch on the day in question, and she instructed her department to watch the cart containing the guns when she was pulled away for her other duties or on a lunch break. She inspected the rounds that she loaded into the firearm that day She did check the firearm again right before handing the firearm to Mr. Halls by spinning the cylinder and showing him all the rounds and then handing the firearm to him. Well, again, that's not the proper procedure. She should not have handed the firearm to Mr. Halls. And had she checked the weapon properly, she would have seen that there were live rounds in it. She also failed to exercise control over the gun, and instead of handing it directly to Alec Baldwin and instructing him on the safe use of it and showing him that it was unloaded, she gave the gun to somebody else, the first assistant director, who had no business being involved in this loop, and then walked out of the church. Well, her attorney then says this was sabotage. He claims the person who put the live round in the box of dummy rounds had to have had the purpose of sabotaging the set. There's several problems with this statement. First, the sheriff said that target practice was occurring on set according to witness statements, meaning that one or more of these guns was being used to shoot things while they weren't making the movie, which is a violation of the safety bulletin because they should not have live rounds on the set. Even if some mysterious person took a live round and put it in the box of dummy rounds so that Halyna Gutierrez Reed would load the weapon with one of these real bullets in order to kill Halyna Hutchins and frame Alec Baldwin as she's claiming, Halyna Gutierrez Reed would have discovered that on a basic safety check. It is her job to make sure that live rounds are not placed in the gun. That's her role as the armorer on set. So even if somebody had this murderous intent, she would have discovered it easily because dummy rounds are easy to detect. With a live cartridge, there is a brass shell casing that contains the gunpowder and has a primer at the bottom. So when the firing pin hits the primer, it makes an explosion, ignites the gunpowder, and then makes the bullet go out the front of the gun real fast. Now, with the dummy round, there is the bullet at the end and there is this brass casing, but there's no gunpowder inside. How do we know that there's no gunpowder inside? They drill a hole in the side of the brass casing. That gunpowder has already been removed and they've replaced it with a BB, a little metal ball. And that way you can shake the dummy round next to your ear and you hear this BB rattling around inside. And the only reason why the BB would rattle inside is because there's no gunpowder in there. And you would also see or feel the hole that's drilled in the side of the cartridge. They also remove the primer. So at the bottom of the gun, they're going to see a big hole in there where the primer usually is. And that way, when it's loaded in the gun, somebody presses the trigger, the firing pin hits nothing. There's no primer to go off. There's no gunpowder in there. This thing cannot fire. Halyna Gutierrez Reed, in her so-called safety check, would have discovered that there was a live round in there. She would have seen this. It would have been ingrained in her if she knew what she was doing to check to make sure that the bullets that she was loading or the cartridges that she was loading in there were not live rounds. She would have visually and physically inspected that herself. And then when she brought the gun over to Alec, she would have unloaded it, showed him that, hey, Alec, these are not real rounds. So he could have confirmed to himself that the gun that he was about to point at the camera was safe. Every basic rule of gun safety was violated on this set. First of all, no live ammunition was supposed to be on the set, but obviously there was at least one live round. Only authorized handlers of the gun were supposed to be in control of it from the time that it was removed from the locked container along with the ammunition until it was handed to the actor. But obviously that didn't happen because Halyna Gutierrez Reed admits that she gave it to an unauthorized, unqualified person, David Halls. We must assume that all guns are loaded until we have physically and visually inspected that they are not. That rule was violated by Halyna Gutierrez Reed, David Halls, and Alec Baldwin. The armorer or prop master was supposed to check the gun in front of Alec Baldwin, or if he was familiar enough with the weapon to check it himself. That didn't occur. We are not to point a gun at anyone that we are not intending to shoot, but this gun was pointed at Halyna Hutchins and Joel Sousa. And then finally, we are not to put our finger on the trigger until we're ready to fire, but Alec Baldwin fired this gun by pressing the trigger. Had one of these rules been followed, Halyna Hutchins would be alive and Joel Sousa would not have been injured. Gutierrez Reed should accept responsibility for her failings that resulted in the death of Halyna Hutchins and the injury to Joel Sousa, instead of insinuating that someone intentionally placed a live round in there to sabotage her, to frame Alec Baldwin, to kill Halyna Hutchins. That is a disgusting claim, and it shows her own guilt. Under New Mexico law, involuntary manslaughter charges can be brought if someone engages in a lawful act, like making a movie, that might result in death, like using a real firearm on the set, if they do so without due caution and circumspection. We have seen that the 4 individuals who were involved in the handling of this firearm failed to adhere to these safety rules, which resulted in the death of Halyna Hutchins. Therefore, they could be charged with involuntary manslaughter. Some have come to Alec's defense saying he's just an actor. He was told that the gun was cold and he was relying on that statement in handling the weapon. But the more that I think about it, I really don't buy that that's reasonable. There were other problems on this set, that a stunt double had fired a gun twice when it was supposed to be cold, when it was actually loaded. An actor also shot herself in the foot with a blank on this set. So there were a history of gun safety violations. Alec should have known about those as a producer. And certainly the prop master and armorer would have known. But they continued with this film and then made this deadly error. Alec Baldwin also took a gun from a first assistant director, not the armorer. That person should have never handed the gun to him. And even if Dave Halls was qualified to hand the gun to him or check it, why did Alec Baldwin accept his word that it was unloaded? One of you left a comment to my last video about this shooting asking, would Alec have taken Dave Hall's word and placed the gun to his own head and fired it without checking it? And I think that's a great way of looking at this. How far do you really trust somebody else's word that the gun's unloaded? In my book, you don't take anyone's word. You got to check the gun. Alec failed to do that, along with these other safety violations on the set. I think that was unreasonable. Hey, I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you next time.